जैसा बंते जी ने कहा, अब हम जो महानिदान सूत्र है उसके जो कुछ सेक्शंस एसोसिएटेड है, सेल्फ, वेरियस एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ सेल्फ, उसके बाद डिस्कस किए गए हैं, उस पर चर्चा करेंगे। वैसे तो ये सब एस्पेक्ट जो हमने ब्रह्मजाल सूत्र में डिस्कस किए उसी का एक सबसेट है। तो फिर भी हम उसको डिस्कस दोबारा एक तरह से कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि उसको जिस तरह से इस सूत्र में प्रेजेंट किया गया है वो ब्रह्मज्ञान सूत्र से कुछ हद तक प्रेजेंटेशन डिफरेंट है। जो कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं वो वही हैं, वेरियस व्यूज ऑफ सेल्फ, तो वैसे ही वही है, उसी एक्चुअली उन सेट्स का ही एक सबसेट है, लेकिन प्रेजेंटेशन थोड़ी डिफरेंट है, और which makes it interesting and quite challenging also. So I'll try to share with you whatever I have been able to understand about this linking actually. I mean, the use of self तो हमने बहुत अच्छी तरह से समझ लिए थे, और उसकी जो लिंकिंग की गई है किस तरह से की गई है वो थोड़ी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी है उसमें, क्योंकि जो the kind of Pali words which are used and their translation which have been done, they don't lend themselves to a clear meaning. So उसमें थोड़ी one has to really, at least I had to struggle a lot in terms of figuring out कि वो what exactly are the phrases being used. So to the extent I have been able to comprehend it, I'll just share. It is, I've been thinking about just two sentences for quite some time. तो पहले तो यही लगेगा कि भाई प्रतिच्य समुत्पाद में सेल्फ को क्यों बीच में उछाड़ दिया। इनफैक्ट कमेंटेटर्स भी जो भिक्खु बोधि है और भिक्खु सुजातो हैं, बियाटा, मैनी वन ऑफ देम हु कमेंटेड ऑन दिस सत्ता, दे आल्सो रेज दिस क्वेश्चन कि अभी तक तो डिपेंडेंट ओरिजिनेशन की चर्चा हो रही थी, अब फिर से सेल्फ की चर्चा करने की क्या आवश्यकता पड़ी होगी। से our guess what could be the reason for it. So we first need to really again go to that basic question, uh, that that all reflective people, those who can think properly and who have that conditions where we can reflect on their existence, they're always faced with this question: where have we come from and where are we going? You know, that's a very simple but a very profound question. Were we born suddenly and then we'll die and then matter ends, or is there something more to it than that? That is a fundamental inquiry which bothers every reflective person. Of course, some people are not reflective, so because of various conditions, and so they just pass life like, as people say, sleepwalking. You know, just because their conditions are not such. So there's one thing that there has to be a reflective nature, and in this, usually, in 99.99%, there is an axiom. You know, axiom मतलब जो बेसिक assumption है, मैथमेटिक्स में एक्शियम्स होते हैं जैसे, जिसके आधार पर सारा मैथमेटिक्स डेवलप किया जाता है। उसी तरह से एक बेसिक ट्रुथ की तरह माना जाता है कि भाई मैं तो हूँ ही, इसमें तो कोई डाउट नहीं है ना, that I exist as an individual differentiated being is what is apparent, you know. In this, at this moment in our discussion, there are 17 people seen on the screen, and so 17 different people, obviously, are sitting at different places with different characteristics. So the question in an what he calls as a asutva, that's the word which we are familiar. one who has not heard Buddha's teaching or understood Buddha's teaching, Puthujana, worldling, common bird person, these are the thoughts of his. That, yeah, of course, he never questions this issue that there is a me as an individual being. So all the issue is that what is this nature of this I? Now, the main contention of the Buddha in the Paticca is that this notion that I am, which is such a stubborn and universally spread notion, is a result of non-understanding of Paticca. That's the main thesis. That because we have not understood Paticca in its entire depth, as a result, we posit a sense, we assume there is a sense of self. And Bhikkhu Bodhi uses a very interesting sentence, which I have copied down here. Ignorance and craving join with the intellect to create a conceptualized view of self, which protects them with a semblance of rationality. So this actually captures the whole mechanism of normal asutava puttujana. We don't have any clear idea of what's going on, but we think we have. We know what's going on. I mean, obviously, I can see, and I'm intelligent enough to understand what's going on. I understand science. मैंने सब पढ़ा हुआ है, साइंस वाइंस सब कुछ पढ़ा है. बट उसमें क्रेविंग भी जुड़ी है, वो पकड़ में नहीं आती कि भाई मैं हूँ और मेरा मेरा कुछ होगा, क्या होगा. एक अंडरलाइंग लेटेंट टेंडेंसी चलती रहती है, और इस कारण से कुछ एक व्यू बना लेते हैं कि ये सेल्फ है, मैं आत्मा है कुछ, और उसके जिस विभिन्न रूप हम देख चुके हैं, डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. और क्योंकि उसमें एक रैशनैलिटी भी जुड़ी हुई है, तो वो उसको एक पूरा बेसिस देता है, जिससे कि हम अपने को कन्विंस कर लेते हैं कि हाँ यही है भाई. और फिर जब हम अब खुद कन्विंस हो जाते हैं तो फिर दूसरों को कन्विंस करते हैं, ट्राई टू कन्विंस अदर्स दैट दिस इज व्हाट द रियलिटी इज. नाउ व्हाट इज द डिपेंडेंट ओरिजिनेशन डू? It explains this issue of past and future. Past में मैं क्या था, भविष्य में मैं क्या होऊंगा. It explains this whole issue of transmigration. There's a word used there by Bhikkhu Bodhi in a purely empirical way. It's a way by which you can experience. And how do we do? We infer from mental and physical phenomena which we can actually experience here now. You can experience craving, we can experience Vedana, we can experience Sanya, we can experience contact, we can experience Nama, we can experience Rupa, we can experience Vijnana. So they're all experienceable realities. And when we see that, what we have studied in dependent origination in great detail is that on the basis of that, there's no need to introduce a concept of I. There's a phenomena are happening in dependence on conditions. That's all. It's like a process which is happening. The people who have not understood dependent origination properly, whom the commentators call as self theorists, जो सेल्फ की थ्योरी बनाते हैं, वो they introduce new principles, metaphysical principles, self, soul. Now, these are not things which you can experience. What we experience is the consequences of Vijnana Pachaya Nam Rupa. That's what we experience, which means we experience various factors of dependent origination. These are all something which each individual can experience. But self or soul, where does it come from? How does it come from? How does this concept come from? Of course, we have seen in Brahmajal they came from rationality, but most of them came from meditative experience. What is a meditative experience? It is within the domain of Namarupa. And there's nothing, and Vijnana and Namarupa. That's all. मुझे I need to see something. ठीक रहेगा साथ में भूल ना जाऊँ कुछ चीजें. So this issue about self, we'll try to analyze through two enigmatic sentences in the sutta, which we did mention in earlier also, but not in full detail. We just put them in a overall context. एक तो कॉन्टेक्ट के बारे में जो एक्सप्लेन किया गया, it was explained in two phases, and then some specific words were used. If those qualities, traits, signs, and indicators through which there is a description of mental body were absent, would designation contact be discerned in the material body? And similarly, there was this, if those qualities, traits, signs, and indicators through which there is a description of material body were absent, would impingement contact be discerned? Now, what are these qualities, traits, signs, and indicators? Say for the mental body. We discussed it. Would you like to, somebody like to point out so that we can have a good discussion? What are these? What do you mean by these qualities, traits, signs, and indicators? Which result in designation contact, which we had called as labeling or giving a name. We had put them together. We can see that. So what are these?
नाम का ही
Yeah, various aspects of nama. Yeah.
हाँ.
So what are those? They're all experienceable facts, experienceable realities, as we can term it. Vedana, Sanya, then Manasikara, Phasa, Chetana. All of these are unique, identifiable, experienceable qualities. Some of them are also traits, which determine the way we behave. And what are the qualities, traits, signs of the material body?
The sense faculties, physical body.
Yeah, but what are the how do we quantify all of them put together?
Yeah, elements. I think it's described as elements, no, in the sutta.
Yeah, there are four
Elements.
which we can experience, isn't it?
Mm.
What is I as a rupa is a combination of four elements. So it's basically a concept which we have commonly agreed upon. A certain combination of four elements which have certain traits, in the sense that when it comes in contact with the object, then I consciousness arises. That is the trait of it or indicator of that I. Similarly of other senses. Now, what does this term indicate? These are actually, if you see them in a overall perspective, it's pointing out some intrinsic characteristics of things which are real, which are not concepts. So it's actually pointing to us here. By this here, of course, it is pointing to the reality. What exactly is the reality which we can experience? So anything which does not have certain unique qualities, traits, signs, indicators is therefore not real. So it's actually this sutta and these things are actually precursors of Abhidhammic way of understanding things. There they talk of reality, four realities: Chitta, Chetsika, Rupa, Chitta, Chetsika, and Nibbana. That's it. Rupa is Rupa, Chitta is Vijnana, and Chetsika is all other mental factors, Nama and everything else. Everything else. All the components of dependent origination, they are Chetsikas. So this is actually pointing out to that other than this, nothing is real because it can't be experienced. Now, the manner of putting these qualities is that these things are actual phenomena with intrinsic nature. Nama, Rupa, and Vijnana have an actual nature. So these qualities, traits, and indicators are objects of direct cognition, which we can experience. But there are mental constructs based upon them, based upon these only, because there's nothing else which is real, which can be experienced. So, based upon them, there are mental constructs like self, like beauty, okay, which have no intrinsic characteristics but are just concepts, thoughts. Why they are not reality? Because they have no intrinsic distinctive quality, trait, sign, indicator which can be experienced. So these four words which have been put are actually the commentaries mention, these are actually to draw our attention to the fact that there are so many things about which we keep on talking about in our conventional language, about which these things are not, you can't find out those things. Beauty, self, we have discussed enough actually. Sometimes you get um, overwhelmed by that. Beauty, for example, is not something which you can directly experience. What we experience is Rupa. In the sense of, both in the sense of uh, direct physical elements and also in the sense of what we can as a object of eye. As an object of eye, we experience it as a form, as a certain shape. Now, what is beauty in that? It's a something which we impose on it based on our own concept, our own perspective of beauty. So this is one sentence. Now there also there is a pointed out description of material body, description of mental body. Now what does this description mean? This is mentioned in a very cryptic, enigmatic sentence which was there. Okay, I think I have written something more. As an example, I've written some things maybe that I'll share. For example, when we say these are qualities, traits, signs through which there is direct cognition, Prithvi Dhatu I have written as an example. It is a characteristics which anybody can experience. We know the idea of heaviness, lightness. This is something which anybody can experience. And we know the movement, concept of movement, which is given a name, of course. So these are all Prithvi Dhatu, Rupa, all the concepts, Vayu Dhatu, Tejo Dhatu, and Vapo Dhatu, they're all having unique characteristics. Vijnana has a unique characteristic of cognizing. And Namrupa has a unique characteristics of all of them. They are impermanent. They're not giving you the experience of them does not result in abiding satisfaction. They are impersonal. They are phenomena, processes which are they are the unique characteristics of them. They are being designated by words. This is a word after all. But they don't depend upon their existence doesn't depend on thought. They have an intrinsic quality. About mental constructs, as I mentioned, no such reflection is possible. Now, the second sentence, which remains the enigma really in the true sense of the term, Buddha uses first, of course, there's another aspect of that sentence which I cut out to for sake of brevity. It is this to this extent that, and when at the end of conclusion of dependent origination, the last sentence is this. It is to this extent that there is a pathway for designation, pathway for language, pathway for description, and even sphere of wisdom, and the round turning is the birth and death process, which is when there is mentality, materiality together with consciousness. Now, this is the way that sentence, Pali sentence, has been translated by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. The translation of Venerable Sajana Sujato is slightly different. I mean, context is the same, but words used are different, which may probably help us in some sense. This is how for the scope of labeling, terminology, and description. Terminology again is language is a better word used by him because nirutti is a very typical word. The science of language is used. Description, and then rest is the same. So what is the sentence conveying is remains really not absolutely clear. One thing is clear that whatever is saying is that the way we name the things, the way the language operates, the way the description arises, is all contained within Namrup Sah Vijnana. Namrup and Vijnana, which means their interaction and the results of those interactions which are experienceable. Or I could even say dependent origination, just as a, for our purposes, that all this is happening within the domain, that whatever identities we give to our experience or to even other objects, they are based on them. There's no other thing which is the basis of any definitions or scope or labeling and language. Now we can try to see what does this term language mean. That's what really Bhikkhu Bodhi and some other commentators have pointed out. He says that this term language or designation or description, they actually are tools of reference that enable us to interpret and evaluate our experience privately to ourselves and communicate our thoughts to others. So when we say something like Pathvi Dhatu, what does this word Pathvi Dhatu mean? It is conveying our experience. Firstly, we are trying to understand experience of heaviness or lightness or extension. We are trying to understand, okay, this is the nature of it. And there is a thing in the world which stands for it, which is a descriptor of it. And once we have given that description, then other people, we can communicate it to others. कि भाई पृथ्वी धातु का मतलब होता है भारीपन का महसूस होना या हल्केपन का महसूस होना, जो आप इस तरह से अनुभव कर सकते हैं. कोई चीज़ जो आपको भारी लगती है, कोई चीज़ आपको हल्की लगती है, तो शरीर में भी इसी तरह के अनुभव होते रहते हैं. कभी भारीपन का अनुभव होता है, कभी और कहीं पे हार्डनेस का अनुभव होता है, कहीं पे सॉफ्टनेस का अनुभव होता है. वेरियस वर्ड्स. There also have a, ये जब hardness शब्द use करते हैं, when you use that word, there's an experience behind it. Softness, there's an experience behind it. So we've defined a word for it, which conveys that experience, which is uh, understandable by others, and we also understand from our experience that this is what it is. So for every language, every designation, there is a referent. Referent meaning a thing in the word that the word stands for. And what this sutta is saying in the what is this particular sentence is apparently saying, and is that all the real referents are Namrup Sah Vijnana, which are that's the real reference, which we can, and there is the Paticca Samutpad. The terms in the Paticca Samutpad are the real reference. So the statement apparently implies that final domain of reference is the phenomena comprised in Paticca Samutpad. And all concepts, words, linguistic expressions emerge from these and ultimately refer back to them. Now, what is happening is that when the concepts are there, they also have their basis in them, but because of ignorance, because of non-understanding of the empirical nature of the process, we associate an individual identity to them. We extrapolate from that something else. We have an experience of jhanic bliss, and we experience from that, we kind of extrapolate that jhanic bliss in terms of a concept of self. This is what I, because that is with ignorance and craving are making us search for it constantly. So if we see it in that sense, this sentence itself indicates how these concepts of self are getting formed. That in the ultimate sense, they are based on experience. But what is experience? We have already defined that. Experience has particular qualities. The real experiences is defined in terms of nama and rupa, and the consequences emerging from paticca samutpada, tanha and clinging and all that. The all these attempts which have been done in defining uh, all the definitions of self have their basis in extrapolating the experience, which is basically, say, within the domain of Namrup Pachya Vijnana. All that experience is being extrapolated and referred to something called self. Referred to being, this is the self. And therefore, all the uh, definitions and various kinds of self which have been posited by the philosophers, by thinkers, by meditators, they are they don't have a underlying reference. They don't have a real reference to them. That is, the concept of self is does not have distinctive qualities, traits, signs, indicators, which he says are the actual phenomena. Actual phenomena have certain qualities, traits, signs, which are objects of direct cognition. Self by itself doesn't have a direct cognition. It is actually a derived concept. So if you can really break through and get a intuitive understanding of this sentence, it actually says that all these concepts, whatever they may be, because all our experiences within Paticca Samutpad, there's nothing other than that. So everything else which is defined, whatever, howsoever logical, rational it may seem, it doesn't have a real basis at all. They are all mental constructs. They are actually, as is put in the first sentence which I have written here, they actually ignorance and craving. They join with the intellect to create a conceptualized view of self. And that is based on experience of Praticca Samutpad, actually. The various links of Praticca, not the understanding of it, but various links of it. And and if so, these the real referents of are Namarupa Sah Vijnana, which means the links. We can experience craving, of course. We can experience pleasant feelings. Mostly it's the game of feelings of various levels of pleasantness, you know. And those experiences, because of ignorance and craving, we posit it as a self. So the concept of self is therefore a result of non-understanding of Paticca Samutpad and positing reality out of things based on the experience, but which by themselves are concepts. And we are not able to see them as mental constructs because of ignorance. We see them as realities. And Kubodi in his commentary uses this is a kind of collective hallucination of the world. And those who have not understood dependent origination, they don't even suspect it. Not only that, when they read the teaching, they always have a interpretation of Paticca Samutpad in terms of who. They'll always think, yeah, Nam Rupa Phasa. Of course, yeah, that's true. That's true. This is Nam Rupa and this is Nama, and contact is happening, and I am feeling that contact, of course. But so the Phasa Pachya Vedana, of course, who feels? Who contacts me? Who feels me? Who craves me? Who clings me? Now, this is a underlying, even in study of dependent origination, even in its practice, when we try to see its operation, that underlying assumption, as I had mentioned, that Moliya Phaguna Sutta, where that monk who is being taught this, he keeps on asking. Bhagavan is teaching the dependent origination in a standard way. And every time he starts asking, he starts there from the what is it that control supports human beings? He says ahara supports, and ahara has these components. He says who eats? It's a common. I mean, it's ever. It's not. It doesn't look like a delusion to say who eats. No? In our repetitive feeling expression, we say I eat the food. He actually asks not this because he understands, of course, physical food I am eating. He says, who eats consciousness? He asks only that question. He says, and then Buddha again reads out, did I say anywhere who is involved in it? It's just an empirical phenomena which is happening. So the Attavada, which is the sense of self, which Buddha is trying to undercut the whole thing from the dependent origination basis. That's how we can understand that these two sentences, if we really penetrate into their depth, Buddha is trying to cut out that the whole philosophies, whole theories in one sense through the understanding of dependent origination. That not understanding it, asutva, obviously they don't even suspect its falsity. And those who have understood, they also, when they try to see, understand it on their own, They try to always think of it in terms of a person who is understanding it, a person who is experiencing things, a person who is responding to the experience, and so on. So I think I'll stop here because it'll be good. We reflect on it for some time, what is being said, how the whole, I mean, in a way, all the discussions which is follows about, his descriptions of self and significance of self and so on, all these are in a way uh, attempt to kind of talk in conventional terms so that people can see. If we understand this term, the underlying basis of self is being cut by the dependent origination. When we understand these simple, these are enigmatic sentences, that there is no basis of the self as we define it. The actual experiences are the links of paticca samutpad. They are the actual experience. Based on that experience, you are extrapolating and inferring and kind of uh, postulating, oh, this experience is myself, this experience is myself, this experience is myself. Why? Because you are not able to see its intrinsic qualities of Nam Rupa as Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta. You're not able to see them because you're not looking at it from that perspective at all. And at every moment of dependent origination, we have an underlying belief in someone who is experiencing all that. Someone who experiences feeling, someone who does the craving, someone who does the clinging, someone who makes the karma and gets into a karmic existence, and then someone who is born. Now, in the apparent conventional sense, yeah, there something is happening. So, Buddha also points out that we also use these words, I, me, yours, and so on, but we understand they are conventional realities. We don't get caught in them. So we distinguish between, because we understand Paticca Samutpad deeply and we understand the whole thing as a process, but from the transactional reality, we have to transact with people, we use these words. But a person who has not understood it properly, he gives a different meaning to these words in the light of that collective hallucination of the word of sense of self, of Attavada, that I am. There is some being behind all the phenomena of experiences. So maybe we could contemplate on it for some time, and if there are immediately some queries, or probably we could keep quiet for 10-15 minutes, and then it will be better, because it will take time to the kind of attempt to put uh, define, for example, language, the way we use words. That's what is meant in that specifically. Nirutti Pattu. Nirutti means the science of language. Technical word actually. Panyati Pattu means developing description or concepts. What is interesting is that he says it is to this extent there is this sphere of wisdom. All wisdom is contained within this understanding of Paticca Samutpad itself. If you understand the interaction of Namrupa and Vijnana and the consequences of that, then you have the complete sphere of wisdom enclosed within that. If you see it very distinct thoroughly. So it's something really worth contemplation. So maybe we can stop. Now over to you, Bhante ji, for whatever you advise.
So ठीक है, I think as you're suggesting, we'll all be quiet, and then जब भी आपको ठीक लगे, you're welcome to resume the conversation.
Yeah, so maybe we keep quiet for 15 minutes, 20 minutes at least. And any questions or comments which we can help us in understanding it better? Yes, प्रोफेसर सुरेंद्र प्रसाद, आपने कमेंट्स में
जी
डाला है वॉल्श ट्रांसलेशन, या इट इज?
हाँ वो तो just for interest I thought I'll
जी
share
जी,
that.
yeah, that's good. That also is a use of the thus far means that is the extent to which the designation and all that. So
So
whatever
I
can
had
this. Ji, please go ahead.
one. First of all, thank you very much for this this explaining. It really helps clarify a lot of things. Thanks a lot. But from what you have explained, ऐसे लगता है कि नाम के जो फैक्टर्स हम नॉर्मली समझते हैं, that's not complete. Really includes all the other mental factors that arise in PS or otherwise, even beyond that, perhaps. Is that a
The
correct understanding? Is that
Yeah,
a correct?
the mental factors which arise in dependent origination. Yeah, because that includes everything.
That includes everything. Right.
Because in the Chetana is basically a Chetana by itself is a ethically neutral factor. But once we talk in terms of avidya or craving, then that completes the whole five khandas. Five khanda is only this only, no? Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnana, and Rupa. So Sankhara has, I mean, one can say Chetana includes Sankhara also. But technically that's it. I mean, in common language, in Sutantric language, say Chetana is pure Chetana or it is accompanied by um, other mental factors. That's it. The whole game of experience.
एक
Vishal,
second
please.
silly observation है, but let me anyway share it. I was just a thought occurred to me that suppose by some miracle all the scientists understand Paticca Samupad and even accept it and investigate it and understand all the reasons how this comes about through physical phenomena. I think the thought that interests me is that will not in any way modify the importance of understanding Paticca Samupad as as a part of our as fundamental to our experience. If you want to rise beyond the sansara.
Yeah, the
Probably a silly comment, but I thought
no, that's right. But the by understanding we actually mean experiential understanding. No?
I understand. This is
Yeah,
experiential understanding,
yeah,
whereas they are looking at it purely from the perspective of
yeah. Concepts.
understanding the external world,
Yeah, yeah.
as if it is part of the external world,
Yeah.
as a
So
phenomenon inside the body or inside the mind or whatever.
Buddha puts all the external material world as rupa, matter hands.
Hmm. Okay.
Rupa has four elements and their four intrinsic correct qualities of shabda, color, taste, and nutrients. So these are the Attakalapa concept there. I mean, it's a Abhidhammic concept, of course. The main point here is that how does one understand, how does one see through the limitations of uh, concepts, if I may put it that way. What you call as concepts, and seeing, distinguishing it from reality. Concept and reality, that's a very important philosophical investigation. But Buddha breaks it down to basically, these are the reality, everything else is concept.
Reality of the world of experience.
Yeah. And in the other sutta, he brings out this concepts arise because of papancha sanya sankha. They arise because of proliferation, associative thinking, because of ignorance. We extrapolate our experience. There he uses that word. We extrapolate experience and try to make theories out of it. Because of ignorance and craving, we have that underlying assumption of Attavada, and then we try to build up the answer to that question. We have a kind of implicit belief
So
in
all
what
the spiritual quests, which are based on who am I, or perhaps have an underlying Attavad connotation.
that's what it is trying to say. Because the moment we put who, it is actually presumed there is I, but it is of a subtler and subtler nature. So more the depth of investigation, subtler the person reaches further. So various concepts of self are essentially attempts at answering that question. And depending on the subtlety of investigation, which could be direct experience or logic, you come to various levels of answers and you get the various descriptions of self. That's it. That's the essence of what is being said.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Today's discussion was very, very helpful. Thank you.
Any other comment or question? We're really trying to understand. Is apparently one sentence or two sentences in their full import. Bodhi in his books has tried to put it in 2 pages कि इसका मतलब ये हो सकता है, इस तरह का इसका implication है. उसमें से जो समझ में आया, I try to share with you. उसका मतलब, if I look at it intuitively, it means he's actually undercutting the whole basis of developing theories about self. But still he goes on to describe them.
So, in summary, there is no I. It is just Nama Rupa, and the process is happening because of our intellectual hearing, heard, read somewhere, uh, told by seniors and parents. We start feeling somebody else is there within us, who is eating, who is listening, who is understanding, isn't it?
We can put it that way. But the trouble is that all of the beings, when they get born, the way they get conditioned in the society, that the infant is conditioned to believe that he's an individual entity. And there is valid reasons for doing so, because he has to live in the conventional world and have to have conventional knowledge. The main issue becomes when conventional knowledge is seen as absolute knowledge. That is the real problem.
Hmm. And we don't either get opportunity, or we intentionally don't go and
Yeah.
reflect what is a reality it is.
Yeah.
That is a barrier for us for a long time.
Because also reflection has to be done with wisdom. That is the problem. No?
Mm, mm,
The people who give different theories of self are doing deep reflection, but based on
mm,
appearances. and their meditative experience, which is being analyzed with the implicit assumption of self. So when you analyze an experience with an implicit assumption of self, then you'll only give various theories of self. So that is the real issue. That they're not able to differentiate between the what he calls as actually factual, ऐसा इस तरह के वर्ड यूज करते हैं जब भिक्खु बोधी. एक्चुअली जो एक्सपीरियंस हो रहा है वो तो आप कह सकते हैं ये है, दिस इज व्हाट इज एक्सपीरियंस, बट बेस्ड ऑन दैट you kind of extend their scope, you go too far from there. In that question, in that sutta, when he says who feels, so Buddha tells him, no, I didn't say you are going too far. This is not the question. I didn't say that. I said with contact as condition, feeling arises. That's it. And with feeling as condition, craving arises. No, who craves is that is your addition.
But the conventional way we come for very long, and the society is very difficult to really get this.
Yeah.
Very, very challenging.
Very true. The very real problem is in the Abhidhammic words, or in this sutta also, the way explanation given, distinction between conventional reality and absolute reality. We should have a clarity of that. Because if you're not able to relate to conventional reality, then you'll get into another set of problems. So the two truths have to be seen properly, and we have to have the ability to negotiate within those two truths. That makes it really challenging. That is the problem. To negotiate between conventional reality and the ultimate truths is we tend to forget, basically. Because of ignorance and craving, we tend to forget it.
If we look things all the time in the view of dependent origination, this self part will minimize it,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes. Certainly.
So, can I then invite you maybe to give a summary हिंदी में, और साथ ही साथ शायद थोड़ा आप हमें कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइज भी कर दें कि हमने डिपेंडेंट ओरिजिनेशन तो अब समझ लिया है इस सूत्र में. अब हम अगले सेक्शन में जा रहे हैं, और मुझे ऐसा समझ आ रही है कि ये जो सेशन था हमारा वो एक तरीके से कनेक्टिंग लिंक है डिपेंडेंट ओरिजिनेशन और जो अगला सेक्शन है व्यूज ऑफ सेल्फ के बारे में. तो अगर अगर मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करूं, थोड़ा अगर आप उसको समरी आप बता दें हिंदी में कि क्या बात
जी.
व्हाट्स गोइंग ऑन जस्ट नाउ.
जी, आपने बिल्कुल ठीक कहा. हम ये प्रयास कर रहे हैं कि डिपेंडेंट ओरिजिनेशन को जो हम समझे हैं उसके जो भगवान ने जो कहा था ना, इट इज़ वेरी डीप एंड डेप्थ है ये सब, तो उसकी डेप्थ का कुछ अनुभव कर पाए. जो सेंटेंस जो कि डिपेंडेंट ओरिजिनेशन का लास्ट सेंटेंस है बेसिकली, उसको आधार बना के हम यहाँ पे ये कहा जा रहा है कि उसको आधार बनाए अगर हम ठीक से समझ पाए डिपेंडेंट ओरिजिनेशन को, और किस तरह से डिस्क्रिप्शन होता है, किस तरह से डेजिग्नेशन होता है, किस तरह से नाम दिया जाता है, किस तरह से भाषा चलती है, तो हम समझ जाएंगे कि नाम रूप के सिवा और कुछ होता नहीं है. जो हमारी भाषा भी है जिसमें विभिन्न शब्द इस्तेमाल होते हैं जो हमारे अनुभव को डिस्क्राइब कर रहे हैं, तो सारा अनुभव हमारा नाम रूप के क्षेत्र में ही आता है. नाम रूप पच्चय विज्ञानम, विज्ञान पच्चय नाम रूपम, and then further Phasa Pachya Vedana and so on. वो actually part of it is already there. In fact, it's there बट आई एम जस्ट मेंशनिंग देम, क्योंकि अगर हम उसमें चेतना को संखार के रूप में देख ले तो दैट इट सेल्फ इज अनफ, दैट्स अनदर स्मॉल पॉइंट। तो भगवान ये कह रहे हैं कि जो जो कि ये जन्म मरण का चक्र है, जो कि अपने अनुभव को नाम देने की बात है, उसको समझने की बात है, और जो प्रज्ञा की बात है, वो सारी नाम रूप सह विज्ञान है। अगर विज्ञान के साथ नाम रूप के इंटरेक्शन को हम ठीक से समझ लें पूरी गहराई से, तो वो सारी बातें उसमें हो जाएंगी। तो उसकी इसी बात को एक प्रेजेंट करने के लिए हमने थोड़ा सा इसको गहराई से समझने की कोशिश की, जितना मैं समझ पाया हूँ। ये मुख्य बोधि ने जो लिखा है, जो सब कमेंट्रीज में है, सब कमेंट्रीज में है, उसके आधार पर जो भिक्खु बोधि की किताब में उन्होंने लिखा है, तो उससे इतना तो स्पष्ट होता है, ये बात तो अपने को सामान्य बात भी समझ में आती है कि भाषा जो है हमारे किसी न किसी अनुभव पे बेस्ड होती है, और वो उसका रेफरेंट है। उसको रेफर, जब हार्डनेस को रेफर करते हैं तो हमें मालूम है हार्डनेस का क्या मतलब है, मोशन का मतलब है तो हमें समझते हैं मोशन क्या होता है, क्योंकि संसार में उसका रेफरेंस है जिससे हम उसको समझ सकते हैं। जब हम फीलिंग का महत्व करते हैं तो समझिए, सुखद वेदना की बात करते हैं तो हमें मालूम है सुखद वेदना क्या होती है हर एक इंद्रिय द्वार पे, क्योंकि उसका एक्सपीरियंस हम सबको होता रहता है। तो उस सेंस में देखते हैं कि नाम रूप और विज्ञान जो है, दे फॉर्म द रियल रेफरेंट्स ऑफ लैंग्वेज। और जो कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं, जो मतलब जिनका कोई बेसिक, जो पहले बात हुई थी कि क्वालिटीज, ट्रेट, साइन, इंडिकेटर, जो उसके इंट्रिंसिक स्वभाव है, ऐसा समझ लें। जो स्वभाव है वो, उसका स्वभाव जो है वो नाम रूप और विज्ञान का स्वभाव है। हर एक नाम के फैक्टर का अपना अपना स्वभाव है, क्लियर। तो उसका क्वालिटी है, उसके ट्रेट्स हैं, और उस आधार पे इंडिकेटर्स हैं कि भाई ये इतने तरह की वेदना होती है, इतने तरह का फस होता है, एंड सो ऑन। उनके साइंस भी हैं कि हाँ फस होता है, कि इसका कोऑर्डिनेशन हो तो फस होता है, इसको फस कहते हैं। लेकिन जो कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं उनके कोई ऐसा, जैसे मैंने उदाहरण दिया सुंदरता का, उसका कोई करेक्टरिस्टिक डिस्टिंक्टिव टेस्ट क्वालिटी हो जो कि हम अनुभव कर सकें, ऐसा कुछ है नहीं। वो शुद्ध मेंटल कंस्ट्रक्ट है, और हर आदमी का अपना मेंटल कंस्ट्रक्ट है। किसी को कुछ सुंदर लगेगा, किसी को कुछ सुंदर लगेगा, लेकिन हार्डनेस, लाइटनेस इसका ऐसा नहीं है। वो हमको अनुभव मालूम है, सबको मालूम है हार्डनेस क्या होती है, लाइटनेस क्या होती है, सुंदरता क्या होती है। इट इज ए कॉन्सेप्ट। इसी तरह सेल्फ क्या है, वो भी एक कॉन्सेप्ट है। आत्मा क्या है, वो भी कॉन्सेप्ट है, क्योंकि उसका डायरेक्ट कॉग्निशन नहीं होता। डायरेक्ट कॉग्निशन वेदना का होता है, जो जिससे के कारण, जिसको हम यूज करके एक रेफरेंस बना लेते हैं कि यही है। जो सामान्य वेदना है, उसको तो जो रिफ्लेक्टिव माइंड वाले लोग थे, मेडिटेटर्स थे, उसको समझ गए कि सामान्य वेदनाएं तो यार अनित्य हैं, बदलती रहती है। लेकिन तो वो वर्ल्डली जो सुख है उसमें तो कुछ नहीं रखा, तो अदर वर्ल्डली सुख में जाया जाए। तो उस कॉन्सेप्ट से उन्होंने कहा ध्यान करते हैं तो ध्यान का सुख तो बहुत ही गहन है और बहुत ही अलग है, बिरला है उनसे। और वो ध्यान अब आप बार बार अनुभव कर सकते हैं, बार एक्सपीरियंस हो जाए तो लंबे समय तक अनुभव कर सकते हैं। तो उन्होंने कहा जो आत्मा है, आनंद का स्वरूप है, वो यही तो है आनंद, और क्या है। वो चाहे पहला ध्यान हो, दूसरा, तीसरा, चौथा, जो भी ध्यान हो। तो उस कारण से, क्योंकि एक कॉन्सेप्ट बना लिया आत्मा का, तो उसके आधार पे हमने एक अनुभव को, जो कि अनुभव था वेदना का, उसको हमने आत्मा का रूप दे दिया उसको। और उसके लिए मैंने जैसे यहाँ पे लिखा था ना कि अल्टीमेटली सारे जो सेल्फ की बात है वो किसी न किसी खंड के ऊपर ही आधारित है। जिसको हम कह देते हैं ये मैं सेल्फ, हो क्या रहा है कि इनका जो रियल नेचर है वो हम देख नहीं पा रहे हैं, और क्योंकि इग्नोरेंस है और क्रेविंग है, तो जो सुख मिल रहा है ध्यान में उसको ही आत्मा का स्वरूप मान रहे हैं। तो टेक्निकली कहा जाता है ओवर शूटिंग द रियल नेचर ऑफ द एक्सपीरियंस। एक्सपीरियंस कुछ है, आप क्रेविंग के कारण उसमें इतना बह गए, उसमें इतना प्रसन्न हो गए, इतना उसमें क्लिंगिंग हो गई, फिर उसको बार बार कर रहे हैं, तो पक्का हो गया कि यही है जो कुछ है, यही है। और उसमें कॉन्फ्लिक्ट भी होता है, कोई कहता है पहला ध्यान, तो कोई दूसरा तीसरा, वो हम पढ़ चुके हैं ब्रह्मजार में, तो उसकी चर्चा करने की जरूरत नहीं। तो ये जो एक जिसे वो कहे कलेक्टिव हेलुसिनेशन, मतलब हम सबका एक साझा भ्रम है संसार में, और जो भगवान की शिक्षा नहीं पढ़ी है जिसने, वो उसमें उसमें इसको कोई दोष भी नहीं दिखता है। मैं तो हूँ ही, इसमें कोई डाउट है क्या? मैं क्या हूँ ये हो सकता है, हाँ शरीर, मुझे लगता है तुम कह सकते हो शरीर बदलता है, मैं ये नहीं कुछ और हूँ, अच्छा चलो कुछ और होगा देखते हैं। तो उन्होंने ये माना कि अच्छा ये नहीं है तो कुछ और देख लो, तो अनुभव है। किसी ने जन्म देख लिया बार बार, जैसे हमने ब्रह्मजाल में पढ़ा था, उसने देखा मरने के बाद मैं यहाँ पैदा हो गया, या मरने से पहले मैं इस जन्म में था, इस जन्म से पहले यहाँ था, अरे मैं तो कंटिन्यूसली चला आ रहा हूँ। तो उस तरह का शाश्वतवाद की बात हो गई। तो ये सारी बातें जो है, जो एक्सपीरियंस हो रहा है उसका मिस इंटरप्रिटेशन हो रहा है, बस सिर्फ इतनी सी बात है। और उसके कारण ही ये फिलॉसफीज बन रही हैं। मुख्य बात यही, और दिक्कत ये होती है कि आधा आधा कच्चा पक्का जब ध्यान होता है, और जब हम प्रतीच्य समुत्पाद जैसी शिक्षा को पढ़ते हैं, तो उसमें भी हम आत्मवाद को साथ ही रखते हैं। अनुभव मुझे ही हो रहा है, ये राग मेरा ही तो है, द्वेष मुझे ही तो अनुभव हो रहा है, स्पर्श मुझ में ही तो हो रहा है, ये आहार मैं ही तो ले रहा हूँ, है ना? ये चेतना मेरी ही तो है, खासतौर पे चेतना बड़ा दुख देती है, ये संज्ञा मेरी ही तो, और किसकी है, तुम्हारी है क्या? सो दिस काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चन भी कम। तो जब हम प्रतिच्छ समुत्पाद में नाम रूप पच्चय या विज्ञान नाम, या नाम रूप पच्चय या फस पढ़ते हैं, या नाम रूप पच्चय या विज्ञान पढ़ते हैं, उसमें भी होता है ये रूप किसका है, मेरा ही तो रूप है, और क्या है, कांटेक्ट कौन कर रहा है, मैं ही कर रहा हूँ। तो हम उसको चांट भी करेंगे तो समझते रहेंगे, हाँ फीलिंग है ऑफकोर्स मेरे को ही तो हो रही है। सो दैट इल्यूजन इज सो डिफिकल्ट टू कट। तो वो भगवान कह रहे हैं कि अगर हम इस बात को ठीक से समझ जाएं कि किस तरह से हम भाषा बनाते हैं, किस तरह से हमने शब्द गढ़ा है आत्मा का, वो उसका रेफरेंस तो अनुभव है, लेकिन उस अनुभव को ओवरशूट कर दिया हमने, उसके असली स्वभाव को नहीं देखा, और उसमें अविद्या और हमारी तृष्णा के कारण उसको ग्रैस्प कर लिया, उसे क्लिंगिंग हो गई, और उसके कारण एक कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ सेल्फ बन गया। अब वो चाहे ग्रैस्पिंग वेदना से हो, चाहे रूप से हो, चाहे संज्ञा से हो, चाहे संखार से हो, चाहे विज्ञान से हो, सबसे ज़्यादा विज्ञान से ही होती है। तो उस आधार पर हमारी कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ सेल्फ बने हैं, और क्योंकि उनका कोई रियल रेफरेंट है ही नहीं, वो सारे कॉन्सेप्ट है, उनमें रियलिटी नहीं है, तो इस कारण से वो उसका जो आधार है वही सारा काट दिया उन्होंने। तो अत्तावाद को वहीं पे समाप्त हो गया एक तरह से, कि अत्ता का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है ये, इट इज़ नॉट ए रियलिटी, इट इज़ ए कॉन्सेप्ट। जस्ट अंडरस्टैंडिंग दिस, दैट दिस सेंस ऑफ सेल्फ, आत्मा का जो मन हमको भाव लगता है कि मैं हूँ, ये एक विचार है जिसको हमने क्लिंग पकड़ लिया, अविद्या के कारण उसको पकड़ लिया, और वो एक उसको एक रूप दे दिया, उसके लिए एक शब्द गढ़ दिया आत्मा, और उसको हमने सत्य मान लिया बगैर उसकी इन्वेस्टिगेशन की। तो ये एक तरह से इस आधार पे हम देखें, तो जो पतिच्च समुत्पाद, बेसिकली हम तो पतिच्च समुत्पाद का आखिरी पैराग्राफ ही पढ़ रहे हैं अभी, तो उसमें ही ये इनहेरेंट है कि भाई सेल्फ वेल्फ कुछ नहीं है। इसके बावजूद भगवान कहते हैं डिस्क्रिप्शंस क्या है सेल्फ के, ये हैं, और फिर उस संक्षेप में उसको उसको वो कन्वेंशनल सेंस में क्या उसमें शॉर्टकमिंग्स है वो समझाते हैं, ताकि हमको और ये बात पक्की हो जाए कि वो एक तरह से इस बात का उदाहरण है कि इस तरह का सेल्फ कैसे बनना, और उसके लिए कैसे उसको काटा जा सकता है। ये जनरल लेआउट हो गया कि जनरली सारे जो भी जितनी भी थ्योरीज आप बना लो, क्योंकि वो शब्द एक न शब्द आपने गढ़ा है, बेसिकली आत्मा का शब्द ही तो है, और उस शब्द का आधार जो है अनुभवी होता है। हर एक शब्द का नाम, कुछ भी नहीं है संसार में जिसमें नाम रूप सह विज्ञान ना हो। और इसका एक और पॉइंट जो सुबह मैं बताना भूल गया था, या समय नहीं था, क्या था पता नहीं, कि जब हम कहते हैं कि नाम रूप जो है विज्ञान के सिवा नहीं हो सकता और विज्ञान नाम रूप के सिवा नहीं हो सकता, तो जितनी भी थ्योरीज हैं जिनमें प्योर कॉन्शियसनेस की बात की जा रही है वो अनटेनेबल है, वो कट गई हुई, उसी बात से कट गई कि विज्ञान कैन नॉट एग्जिस्ट विदाउट नाम रूप एंड नाम रूप कैन नॉट एग्जिस्ट विदाउट विज्ञान। तो उसका एक प्रोफाउंड इम्प्लीकेशन है कि भैया प्योर कॉन्शियसनेस नाम की चीज जो ऑब्जेक्टलेस कॉन्शियसनेस है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। दिस इज द टीचिंग ऑफ द बुद्धा। सो ऑल द थ्योरीज एंड मोस्ट ऑफ द metaphysical speculations have the understanding of a pure consciousness, pure witness like consciousness, कहते हैं ना, witnessing consciousness which is pure, which is not uh, which witnesses phenomena and which exist by itself as an independent reality. Buddha says there's no such thing possible. This sutta clearly shows there's no such thing possible. तो वो भी एक और एक सारी काफी सारी चेन ऑफ पर जो सेल्फ व्यूज हैं वो सारे उसमें कट गए। ये संक्षेप में इस बात को हिंदी में समझाना है। तो ममता को समझ में आ गया?
जी सर, थोड़ा थोड़ा समझ में आया सर।
ठीक ठीक ठीक। इस पे चिंतन करने की आवश्यकता है गहराई से।
जी जी।
आप इतना मैं सबसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि हम अपने जो अनुभव को एनालाइज, क्योंकि हम बहुत बार एनालाइज करते हैं, दुख हुआ तो उसको समझें, क्या तृष्णा है, क्या वेदना है, कैसे काम, कैसे वेदना बनी, कि कौन से अनुभव से वेदना आई, फिर किस पे तृष्णा जागी, फिर हमने उसको क्लिंगिंग किया तो उपादान हुआ, ये सब करते हैं। तो हम ये भी देखें कि क्या हमारे मन में ये भाव है, ये तृष्णा मेरी तो है, क्लिंगिंग मैं ही तो कर रहा हूँ, और कौन कर रहा है, ये वेदना मुझे ही तो अनुभव हो रही है। सो दिस इज समथिंग वर्थ रिफ्लेक्टिंग एंड एक्चुअली चेकिंग कर ले, तो पता चलेगा कि किस तरह एक अंडरलाइंग अत्तावाद हम सब में चलता रहता है साथ साथ।